Omar Marmoush becomes Manchester City's third signing this week as the champions' rebuild continues. Yeah, Marmoush, the latest big-name player in the door as the club's spending goes past £100 million in this transfer window. Kyle Walker won't be a City player for much longer. He's in Milan ahead of a loan move. Meanwhile, Cunha is wanted by Nottingham Forest. Will they make a club record offer for the Wolves forward? Manchester United and Napoli are still apart in their valuation of Alejandro Garnacho following a second round of talks in Italy. Will he be on the move? Could Tottenham really end up not signing any more players this month? Well, Ange Postecoglou provides an update on their transfer situation. And Ipswich strengthen their squad by bringing in Brighton's Julio Enciso on loan. Yeah, absolutely loads going on this Thursday. Good afternoon to you at home and to Sam Abasaki, to Statman Dave and to Dave Reed as well. You all right this lunchtime?
Good,
fantastic.
Ready to go again. There's loads going on, isn't there?
There is.
There's a lot going on. Right, we're going to start, though, with Manchester City. They have made their third signing of the window in Omar Marmoush from Eintracht Frankfurt. That for a fee of £63.2 million. Before we chat about the player, let's just hear from City's new signing.
I'm really excited. I can't wait to get on the pitch, meet the teammates and start my journey with the club.
You've made a terrific impact on the pitch over the last couple of seasons in particular. That's meant that you've been watched and linked to many different clubs. What was it about City that made you make the move to this football club?
City is one of the biggest clubs in the world over the past 10 years. Of course, it's an honor that they showed the interest in me and that now I'm here. The last 2 years, my last 2 seasons were great, but it's just the beginning for me. I'm so happy to be here, and for me, City is one of the biggest clubs in the world, so it was not a question.
For some of our fans who maybe haven't seen you play that often, can you just describe your style and what you think your main strengths on the football pitch are?
My main strength, I would say that I always want to win. That's from a character point of view. On the pitch, I'm fast, good on the ball. I try to see where the spaces are and try to exploit the spaces, and I'm dangerous.
I'm dangerous. OK, like that. Interesting there, Dave, to hear him say, look, the last 2 seasons have been great, but this is just the beginning for me. Put into context, how much do you think he'll make an immediate impact, I suppose, in this City side?
I think it'll be big this season. He's been on absolute fire, 15 goals, the 9 assists. But if you actually look at that, he's a bit of a late bloomer in a sense of his first 78 games of top-flight action. He scored only 10 goals. Then he moved to Frankfurt, 46 games in the Bundesliga, 27 goals. So he's a player that's really starting to evolve as a footballer. And he mentions he's fast. He is very, very quick. But he marries that with the strength as well. At times he bursts past players and he can hold them off and put the ball in the back of net. He's a finisher, second striker, pace a big attribute. His feet are very, very quick, gets shots off well. Perfect for the Premier League, in my opinion.
Perfect for City?
Perfect for Manchester City as well. I think we saw with Haaland and Julian Alvarez, they started to build a real nice relationship together where Julian would run off Haaland. That's something that City haven't really had this season. And I think that'll come back with Omar Marmoush. And actually looking at his positions as well, when you take a look at his performances for Egypt, he scored only 2 goals in 17 games, but largely been used on the left wing. And actually, if you look at his goals over his career at Frankfurt, 71% have come when he started either as a second striker or as a striker. So I think Guardiola's going to use him through the middle.
I think as well, Marmoush is someone who can play up front on his own as well. If it's difficult to rotate Erling Haaland, but if there comes a point where Pep Guardiola decides that he wants to give him a rest for a game.
Well, you don't know what's going to happen, whether it's injury.
Exactly, yeah. He's perfectly capable of leading the line. And set pieces as well. We didn't even mention that. He's a set-piece specialist, so he brings a lot to the table for City.
It feels like it's a big signing.
Yeah, for
It's got
sure.
that feel around it.
Yeah, and the fact that, he left the club amicably as well, they gave him a great send-off. Like, it seemed like everyone was just happy for him. He's coming into a club that obviously they're not doing great at the moment, but they've got great players. And like you said, there's going to be times where he might be having to play up front if Haaland's injured. But remember, when Kevin De Bruyne was injured in the last few seasons, Alvarez was the player to step in. And like we said in the summer, they never really replaced that type of player. And we've seen what he's doing at Madrid as well. So I think him coming into the side, it's going to be great. They've spent a lot of money, but the confidence that he has, talking about he's fast, he's dangerous, that's the type of things you want to hear as a fan when you want your team to, continue performing.
Yeah, you see the numbers there, when we're saying sort of the feel of a big signing, just look at where it ranks in terms of City's most expensive signings ever. Dave, we were talking this morning, weren't we, in Good Morning Transfers, that we don't really see City do this often. This is a third signing, obviously. Marmoush joins the couple of defenders that they've already brought in. It feels like they're just, the busiest club out there at the moment.
Yeah, and you saw on that graphic the players around Marmoush on that list, Ruben Dias and Rodri, were the players either side of him. And if if he has an impact anything like those two players, he will be doing all right. But yeah, it feels extraordinary what City are doing in this transfer window. They do not do this in January. And you look at the spending comparison. So the top figure is the money spent by Premier League clubs last January. That's all the Premier League clubs combined. It was a quiet January last year. And then Manchester City have already spent more this January than the combined Premier League total for last year. So that just puts into context for you the amount of investment that City are doing. And you think about the January window, usually it's for clubs who are either in crisis or they see a player that they were probably going to sign anyway down the line and they're able to expedite that forward. Now, if you're looking on the scale of that, City are probably closer to the crisis end. I'm not saying that's where they are, but they're probably closer to that end than the other end. So they needed players that could make an impact for them now so they can really try and cement that top four. Yeah.
A crisis in the sort of City.
A bad season in sixth place in the league. Yeah, no, but
talking about incomings there. Meanwhile, Kyle Walker is on his way out at the Etihad, having a medical at AC Milan right now. Actually, that is ahead of a 6-month loan deal. Sam, this is one we expected. Is it good for him? He's been at City since 2017, since joining from Spurs, of course, but just to have a new challenge.
Yeah, for sure. And he's not the only player that we've seen in this situation at City. Like you said, he's been such a key figure in them winning every single trophy. Four Premier League titles back to back. That's going to take a lot out of you. He's not the only player that's been linked. Kevin De Bruyne has been linked with move away. Bernardo Silva, Gundogan left to Barcelona. He's come back. But Pep Guardiola said in multiple interviews that it's going to have an effect on these players, especially when they're reaching the latter stages of their career. I think AC Milan is a great place. He's going to be playing with players that he's used to from the England setup. And yeah, it's a new challenge. Italy's nice. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think it makes sense for him.
Yeah, we're talking of the England setup. He still wants to be part of the England setup under Thomas Tuchel.
Yeah, and I think you look at the system that he might play. It might be a back three from Thomas Tuchel, and we know that Kyle Walker can play that. We've got to remember what he outplayed Vinicius Junior in a Champions League semi-final not too long ago, and that's a player that has a super high level. Italy will be different for him. The pace of the league is a little bit slower. That'll help him. He's struggled a little bit in the transition this season for Manchester City when they've been getting caught. But as well, that's the entirety of the Manchester City team this season. Uncharacteristically, they're not defending well collectively. But I think with Kyle Walker, it's a great step forward and it will get him closer to the England setup, in my opinion.
And you don't last under one of the greatest managers of all time unless you are a top-class player. And I don't know whether Kyle Walker is underappreciated by football fans. I don't know, because he is...
Yeah.
And he might be. He's almost like one of a dying breed, really, those old-school flying right-backs that can get up and down. Right-backs often now are either almost converted centre-backs, or they're asked to invert, or they're asked to do different things. If you're at Chelsea, you play number 10 as a right-back. and Kyle Walker is almost that old school player who can get up and down, and we might not see another Kyle Walker for a while.
Right, let's get to Nottingham Forest now, who are trying to cement their place in the top four by strengthening in key areas. Well, Ben Ransom is at the club's training ground for us. Ben, great to see you. We know that Forest want to sign Matheus Cunha, and it appears, they're willing to spend big as well to try and get him through the door.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it, doesn't it? It sounds like they would be prepared to spend a club record fee to get Cunha here this window. Now, I must relay the news from Wolves in the sense that they are adamant that Cunha is one of the best players and he's not for sale. But there's a little bit of uncertainty when you consider the comments made by Vitor Pereira after the game against Chelsea, unhappy with some of his body language after that defeat, and Cunha himself suggesting that he was unhappy with what his manager said after the game. And he's been Wolves' standout player, there's no doubt about that this season, which has led to a number of Premier League clubs, including Arsenal and including Nottingham Forest, in looking at him very, very closely. But you understand it'd be a fee in the region of £60 million to even tempt Wolves to consider it. Wolves, for their part, though, saying they don't need to sell, they don't need the money right now. Their priority is to stay in the Premier League, and Matheus Cunha will obviously, if he's still at the club beyond the window, be a massive, massive part of helping them try to do that. So that's a really intriguing one. But what it does show is that Nottingham Forest are clearly looking, if they can, to strengthen their attacking options in this window.
Well, sticking with that theme then, because Cunha not the only player that they're looking at the moment. What can you tell us about their attempts to sign Yoane Wissa from Brentford?
Well, we can tell you that Brentford have rejected a bid which was thought to be in the region of just shy of £22 million for Yoane Wissa. And you can see why he would be another player that a club like Forest would absolutely love to get through the door, because he's proven himself in the Premier League. And again, this season has been in fantastic form, hasn't he, as part of that team, Brentford team, which has scored relatively freely. Wissa himself scored in that 2-2 draw against Manchester City to take his Premier League tally beyond that of Ivan Toney. So it puts into context just how reliable a goal scorer he's been for them over the last couple of seasons. A player who technically very good in and around the box, scores plenty of goals, and has perhaps gone under the radar until this season, really, in terms of club from people outside of Brentford noticing the good work he does. As I say, Brentford rejecting a bid in the region of £22 million for him. But again, it underlines where Wolves are looking to try and strengthen, to try and give Chris Wood and their attacking players perhaps a little bit of help as they try and secure Champions League football for next season. That would be an incredible feat if they were able to do it. Now, Nuno Espirito Santo, from my experience, doesn't necessarily enjoy this part of the season in terms of talking about transfers in press conferences. To be fair, I've been dancing with Pep Guardiola for most of the window, so why not bring Nuno in, maybe a little bit of a waltz later on. Can't promise we'll get any answers, but we'll certainly try with the Nottingham Forest manager at 1:30 this afternoon.
We believe in you, Ben. Good luck. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's like a holiday for him going to
Isn't it
Nottingham
just?
Forest,
Yeah. We'll come back to Yoane Wissa in just a moment. Let's start with Matheus Cunha then. And Ben saying there, of course, Wolves want to keep a hold of him. But Dave, he's played in a load of different positions for Wolves. Just how versatile is he as a player?
Yeah, Vitor Pereira's described him as a special player. Gary O'Neill absolutely loved him as well. And he joined Wolves actually in January 2023, helping to keep them up under Julen Lopetegui. And in just a couple of years, he's already had 3 different managers, and he's been played in a variety of positions too. Now, this is his minutes played by position since he joined Wolves. Lopetegui described him as having the potential to be a complete forward. Well, he's pretty much played in every single position possible. He's played as a number 9. Gary O'Neill also did that at times when he was in charge at Wolves, but O'Neill also liked him as a player who could drop off that front line and come deeper and link the play. Arguably, though, Cunha's best position, and the one he's locked down really, and the one that scouting clubs are looking at, is this one here, this left 10 half space where he's able to drop deep, pick up the ball and drive at defences. He's also got the ability from picking up the ball from that kind of range to shoot from distance as well, and also find teammates running into the box. He is a vital player in Wolves' bid to stay in the Premier League. Look at the impact he's having as well on that team. Top of Wolves' rankings for goals and big chances created. Second for assists. And look at those take-ons as well. Top of the rankings at Wolves, and just highlights where he's able to pick up the ball from deep and really run at players and take on players and make things happen for this Wolves side. He's going to be vital to keep them up this year.
Yeah, as a numbers man, there's some good numbers, aren't they?
Very, very good numbers. And I think that the stat that we mentioned previously, those big chance created, that's more than the 3 next in Wolves' squad combined, showing that kind of creativity that's missing in the team if Cunha were to move on. The other thing, 44% of the goals Wolves have scored in the Premier League this season Cunha has scored or assisted.
Yeah, that's a big percentage, isn't it? Sam, I mean, Ben spoke about it there. It just shows Forest's ambitions this season.
Yeah, for sure. And they know the position that they're in. They've done really well, but they know there's a long way to go until the end of the season. So the reality is, if you want to, have players that've got the X factor in those pressurized moments, Cunha is that player. He's going to make something out of nothing. Like you said, the goals, the assists, the amount of chances he creates, the way he links up with his teammates. I think he would be such a good player for any top side that wants to, play in European sports that are challenging for trophies to pick up. But like you said, it's going to take a lot of money.
And on Yohan Wissa then, similar to Matheus Cunha at Wolves, you can see why Brentford don't want to let him go, but also why Forest would want him.
Yeah, it's the impact not only off the bench. When Tony was at Brentford, he was a bit part player. He'd come on, but he scored 7 goals in both of those seasons. And then when Tony's left, 12 last season, 11 already this season. When actually you look at his goals per game this season, it's at 0.7. That ranks him in the top 4% of forwards in Europe's top 5 leagues in the last year. They're quality numbers from it. But also if you look at his injury record, he hasn't had an injury since moving to the Premier League that's taken him out of games. So he's always available, puts the ball in the back of the net, from open play as well. He's not a penalty merchant. He does score in those situations as well. But he's a player that's just so good. And you can see why Forest are interested in him and why Brentford really need to keep him as well.
Yeah, right. Loads still to come. We're going to be live to Brighton after the break as a player departs. And also, as always, we're going to be talking about Manchester United as well. So welcome back to Transfer Talk. We've seen activity from Brighton today. So let's cross to the club's training ground now and join Jamie Weir. Jamie, great to see you. Already some activity today, then Julio Enciso's move. We thought it was coming. He's joined Ipswich.
Yeah, that's right. Julio Enciso has left on loan to Ipswich today, which is actually his birthday. It's his 21st birthday today. So, feliz cumpleaños, Julio, if you're watching. And I think what his departure means is that it's extremely unlikely, it probably was unlikely anyway, that Evan Ferguson would be allowed to leave during this window. It seems every transfer window we talk about, a number of clubs being interested in Evan Ferguson, but if he were to leave, it would leave Danny Welbeck as the only recognised out-and-out striker. And with another forward option in the shape of Julio Enciso leaving today, I would imagine Brighton fans can probably rule that one out now. He's been a bit part player under Fabian Hürzeler in Enciso, so yeah, he is one out the door today, and we wait to see whether there might be any in the door at Brighton.
Yeah, happy birthday, Julio, then. You mentioned incomings. Tell us about a bid that has been rejected for the Derby defender, Aaron Cashin.
Yeah, we understood there was interest in Aaron Cashin. Derby County, all the information is that they will not be letting him go this window. They're short of defenders themselves, so I think that's almost one that's dead in the water before it even got started, to be honest. Look, Brighton are one of the clubs in the Premier League that have had the most number of players out injured. They've had a really lengthy injury list for a long time, but a lot of those players are now coming back, so it almost feels for Fabian Hürzeler, I would imagine, like he is inheriting a new squad right now, that players are coming back from injury. So it has been pretty quiet around here, and there isn't too much chatter about too many players coming through. I think he's fairly happy with the settled squad that he has here. So when he faces the media in just under an hour from now, I can't imagine he'll give too much away when it comes to transfer talk. It'll probably be far more about this nice little run that Brighton find themselves on now. 3 wins in a row, having gone such a long time without a win. It's 3 wins in a row, all on their travels. So I suppose the question now comes, when are you going to win at home again? Because early November against Manchester City was the last time the fans at the Amex got to see Brighton win. So I'm sure they would like to put that right this weekend against David Moyes, as the youngest manager in the Premier League takes on the oldest manager in the Premier League.
I love it. Can't wait for you to ask Fabian Hürzeler about that then. Thank you, Jamie. We'll chat to you again soon. Right then, that's Brighton, but what about the situation at Manchester United? Well, club officials left Italy last night. That is after holding talks with Lecce over a deal to sign Patrick Dorgu, and they held discussions as well with Napoli over a move to sell Alejandro Garnacho. Dave, just sort of set the scene for us. Where are we with both of those?
Yeah, so talks have been held this week. We've seen pictures of those Manchester United officials in Italy, where they've been holding talks with Lecce over a move for Dorgu. It's expected that United will formalise their interest with an offer for the player. I think United were looking at an offer, or under discussion was around £30 million, and Lecce started off what they were looking for was around 38. So it seems like there's work to do in order to meet in the middle there. I think there's a little bit of confidence from United's side that they might be able to meet somewhere in the middle. And then similarly on Garnacho, there's a bit of a gap between what Napoli are willing to offer and what United are looking for. Napoli were looking for an offer or a fee around £46.5 million as a total package. United started off much higher than that, but I think their stance has softened a little bit in the last few days during those talks, and they've been looking for around £55 million. So again, work to do in terms of meeting in the middle on those fees. I think Napoli are also looking at alternatives. They're looking at Karim Adeyemi from Borussia Dortmund. So that's one to keep an eye on in the background if they can't, well, get things moving with Garnacho.
What do you make of the sort of chatter and talk around Garnacho and Chelsea at the moment? Do Chelsea need him? Would he fit in there? Can you see it happening?
I think, I don't know. I think it suits the profile that Chelsea have been going for in the last few windows in terms of age and the experience that he has at his age. Like we said, when he burst to the scene at United, he was playing a lot of games this season. He's played more games than all of the wide men at Chelsea. And sometimes United fans think that that's actually a bad thing because of his age, and, you know, there's going to be inconsistencies. You know, Enzo Maresca has said it with his side. You know, you can't expect 21, 22-year-olds to have a consistent season throughout the season. So I think it makes sense. I'm not sure if it's a move where he's going to start week in, week out, or whether it's going to disrupt maybe Sancho's progression that we've seen there, Madueke, Neto as well. But maybe with the Mudryk situation, João Felix has been linked with a move away as well. The money that they're asking for. You said earlier that United and Chelsea have got a good relationship, but I think the fee that they're asking for, I see it being one of those moves that could potentially go until like the last day of the window.
Yeah, for sure. But, you know, you look at that fee and then you look at the potential. Something that Chelsea do quite well, isn't it? They've signed a lot of young players. And I think it's like, where does Garnacho fit in the squad? Garnacho's played both on the right and the left and looked very good in both of those positions. You know, recently in the FA Cup game against Arsenal, got himself a really good assist where he was aggressive, he won the ball back and made the right decision. And I think we've got to keep going back 20 years old, 20 years old, 20 years old, because we look at him like he's a 25-year-old. You've got to think Mohamed Salah and Sadio Mane, they hit their peak around 25, 26. So this player's got a massive amount of potential, and Manchester United would be silly to sell him now, given where he could go. But at the same time, the financial constraints at United at the moment, this might have to happen to allow someone like a Dorgu to come in that's a little bit more important in terms of the system right now. But you don't sell your best young players, do you? So it's difficult.
Chelsea are in the market for a wide player as well. Jamie Gittins is another one that they're looking at. You do feel like if they are to push the button on Garnacho, there would have to be a fairly high-profile departure. Obviously, João Felix is one, maybe. Christopher Nkunku is another one that we've talked about in this transfer window as well. So if they were to push forward with Garnacho, you would feel like they might have to move someone out.
Yeah. Just back, because you've all sort of touched on the fee here, and put into context, Dave, why United are so sort of desperate to sell him when he is an academy graduate, only 20, and with all this potential as well. But just put into context the financial situation at Manchester United at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think United would say that they're not desperate to sell anyone at this point. I think there is a kind of realisation that no player is untouchable at Manchester United, and I think it's important also to point out that all the Premier League clubs, as we found out the other week, are compliant with PSR for the accounting period ending 2024. And this is the final year of those dreaded PSR as it stands, as we know it right now. But clubs are still having to be mindful of their financials up until the end of this accounting period in 2025. They're going to be trialling a squad cost ratio style system from next season. I think United do have a bit of manoeuvrability to sign players in this window and in the summer as well, in order to back Ruben Amorim with some of the players that he would like to fit into. You're talking about the system there. He needs wing backs to play this system that he wants. So I think there is a little bit of manoeuvrability within the financials. But I mean, just to put into context, even just today, I think that, The Athletic, in an article by Mark Critchley, has cited the September accounts, saying that United still have a net figure of £319 million in transfer fee instalments to pay for players that they've already signed, and £154 million of that is due within a year. So it just puts into context a little bit the financials that are ongoing at Manchester United at the moment. And I think they would like to give Amorim more money to spend, and in order to do that, some of their most saleable assets are going to be touted around, are going to be on the market. And you look at the United squad, have they got loads of players that they can sell? No. It's down to one or two that they can get a good fee for in order to try and help rebuild that squad.
Yeah, well, another one who might be on the way out is Marcus Rashford. We're still awaiting news on this situation. We know that he trained yesterday, like Alejandro Garnacho, with the first team ahead of that Europa League tie with Rangers this evening. We know, yes, there's been interest from Barcelona. His camp met with the Barca execs. That was earlier this week. There's also been interest from Borussia Dortmund as well. How do we see the next couple of weeks going? Do we think that he will ultimately actually end up staying at United? Is that the most likely scenario?
It is, yeah, especially with Eric Garcia. Looked like he was going to go to Como last week. He's now stated today that he wants to stay at the football club. That's reports in Spain. Then you're looking at Orejo's going to sign a new contract by reports. Ansu Fati is probably the only player that Barcelona could look at. So right now, Marcus Rashford should make the best decision for himself. Does he want to stay at Manchester United, or does he want to compete at a really high level? Barcelona's probably the only club that it would work out with. Hansi Flick and Rashford would be a match made in heaven. And, we go back to Marcus Rashford. He's had 3 seasons in the Premier League where he's been directly involved in over 20 goals. That's very, very good. His goal record at Manchester United, a little inconsistent on season to season, but overall is very, very good. And we go back to the same point. He's the joint top scorer at Manchester United and he's not played since December. That's still there. He'd be an asset to United versus Rangers. He'd be an asset back into the Premier League. So for me, it'd be integrating him back in as quick as possible. And then you're at a point where if the Barcelona move comes at the back end of the window, cool, that's a great option for Marcus Rashford. Could explore that and move forward.
Going to be interesting, isn't it, to see what happens over the next 11 days. Right, coming up on Transfer Talk, we're going to be speaking to French football expert Jonathan Johnson, who has news on Mo Salah. And also, we are going to discuss Arsenal's search for a striker as well. Hello, welcome back to Transfer Talk. We've been to Brighton, we've been to Nottingham. We're saving the best till last. How about Paris? Yeah, that's where we can speak to our French football expert, Jonathan Johnson. Jonathan, brilliant to see you. There is a strange situation involving Rando Kolo Muani. Tell us about what's going on over in Paris at the moment.
Yeah, this one's been a really odd one because I think people have been aware that Kolo Muani has been in Turin for some time now and has passed his Juventus medical successfully. But because PSG, a slight oversight on their part in terms of the players that were loaned out outside of France, the non-domestic loans, they've actually had to take evasive action and essentially cancel the contract of Juan Bernat, who was on loan at Villarreal. He'll remain at Villarreal on a short-term contract until the end of the season, and that frees up one additional loan spot outside of Ligue 1, for which Randal Kolo Muani will be able to finally join Juventus on loan until the end of the season. And a reminder that Juve will take care of 100% of his wages in that one.
Jonathan, Mo Salah keeps being linked with a move to PSG. What's the latest in France?
Yeah, this is one that keeps coming back with insistence. I think PSG have felt for some time that it's perhaps part of a tactic for Salah to obtain the contract extension that he's hoping for from Liverpool. But the amount of times it does keep coming back up, and obviously looking at the way that PSG have performed as well in Europe and not scored enough goals, that obviously it would be a tempting solution for PSG. But it is a move that goes against what PSG are trying to pursue in terms of their project. And this is one that's still considered unlikely, even if the Salah contract situation is obviously dragging on with Liverpool.
Jose Mourinho at Fenerbahce is looking for a defender, and looks like he's got one that's been admired by Premier League clubs.
Yeah, so this situation is a developing one. Skriniar from PSG has gone over there and is essentially looking at potentially going in on loan. Obviously, Diego Carlos has been announced as well this morning by Aston Villa to be departing for Fenerbahce as well. So it could be that Jose Mourinho is actually getting two defenders. But the Skriniar situation is an interesting one because it's another potentially big set of wages off the books. We know PSG have already signed Kvaratskhelia, and now with Randal Kolo Muani's loan move to Juventus set to go through, Skriniar coming off the books as well could potentially enable PSG to be in a situation where they might be able to make one more move before the end of the window.
That sounds interesting. Well, we've been reporting as well that Rennes are in advanced talks to sign Kyogo Furuhashi for around £10 million from Celtic. What's your understanding of the latest on that?
Yeah, and on this one, it sounds like Jota might end up returning to Celtic, currently with Rennes, but has an agreement with the club that he's able to leave. Sounds like it will be linked to this deal, perhaps not directly part of it, but it does sound like the Portuguese will be making a return to Glasgow Celtic.
And Jonathan, just lastly, we were talking quite a bit on our show this morning about Evan Ferguson, who's wanted by a number of clubs, it seems. But could he link back up with a former manager?
Yes, there's a bit of a situation at Marseille where they're potentially moving Albion might go to Eintracht Frankfurt. And this is one that has created a potential lead for a number of different players to come in and fill that gap for Marseille. And Ferguson, obviously knowing Roberto De Zerbi from their time together at Brighton, that's a speculation that has started to gain a bit of importance in the last day or so. But he's one of a number of leads for Marseille at the moment. So definitely one to keep an eye on, but not one that I would necessarily consider to be maybe the most realistic for Marseille at this moment in time, but no, January.
Jonathan, as always, lovely having you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on, and we will chat to you again next Thursday. Bye, Jonathan. Yeah, okay. Right, to Arsenal now, and all window and previous windows, to be fair. It feels like we've been talking about their need for a striker constantly. There is a long-term interest in RB Leipzig striker Benjamin Šeško, and discussions are ongoing over whether a deal is possible in this window. Is it looking likely? Is it now looking more unlikely than likely?
It's definitely looking more unlikely than likely, I would say. It would take a major shift from everybody if this deal was to happen. I think it would be a big shock now if it were to move and accelerate towards him joining Arsenal. When you've got the manager going on record saying he's not going to be sold, when you've got the agent going on record saying he's not moving, you know that it's probably not going to happen. He hasn't got a release clause. Potentially our understanding is that there's an agreement, nothing written, but a kind of gentleman's agreement between the player and the club that he would be able to move in the summer. But right now it seems like that's a non-starter, really.
What are the other options? Are there any other options?
It's been tough. Look, I wanted to bring the players Ivan Zapata, 33 years old, done it in Serie A. But we're going to go a little bit more realistic. I've looked at contracts here because I think that's quite important. Arsenal don't want to spend too much money if they're going to go and get someone like a Benjamin Šeško. So Vlahovic has got, a year and a half left on his deal, similar with Lookman, and Jonathan David's contract expires in the summer. So that's the logic. We're looking at players that Arsenal could get right now. And if we're going to start with Vlahovic, he's a player that obviously came with great promise to Juventus, been directly involved in a goal every 142 minutes at Fiorentina. That's dropped off a bit in terms of 142 now versus 124, at Fiorentina. But I think he's a player that's only 24 years old. Remember Diego Costa, the player that carried Chelsea, Champions League finals, brilliant Atletico Madrid. It took him a while to get going in European football. Didn't play in Champions League till he was 25. Then went on a rampage, scored 36 goals in 52 games. Don't write him off yet. And if Arsenal could get him at a cut fee in January, maybe that's a move that they could do to really boost the squad.
We've been working on these transfer shows for how many years? how many times have we talked about Dusan Vlahovic and links to Arsenal?
Yeah, most windows.
Yeah, it's just what it feels like, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's obviously been quite heavily looked at by Arsenal, but also other Premier League sides as well. And maybe the feeling is that he doesn't quite fit into what Thiago Motta's trying to do at Juventus, so maybe that would mean that he is available. But yeah, I mean, we've been talking about it for
Feels like it. What about the other options then?
I think looking at Lookman's a player that I spoke at the start of the window. Again, contract expires in 18 months. He's a hero at Atalanta. The Europa League final hat-trick was brilliant. But looking in our sample of players here, 29 goals in the last 12 months for club and country, 10 assists. When I look at Lookman, he's a player that can play in so many different roles and positions, and that's why I think for Arsenal it could work out, because he could start playing as a 9. Then if Arsenal do get Benjamin Šeško, could be moved wide, could be moved into attacking midfield. There's a lot of variability in his positioning. And in terms of players, obviously, players get written off, Sam, right? Mohamed Salah was at Chelsea, was a flop, went away to Serie A, played for Fiorentina, Roma. One of the best players in Premier League history.
I think Lookman, I'm surprised he's actually not there. We've not heard a lot more noise about him being linked with Arsenal, especially the fact that, the left-hand side, Martinelli is doing decent this season. He's got a few goals, but in terms of competition, Trossard's got a few goals, but on the right-hand side, like you said, he can play across the front three, and he would be the perfect player. Whether Atalanta let him go is highly unlikely, because he is their star man. He's African player of the year as well, but he's got the X factor that you need from a player. And you see it with Arsenal. Sometimes they struggle to create chances when teams have got the low blocks, and they're good at, creating chances at some points, but you need that one player. Saka's normally that person. If they had Lookman on the other side, it would be great for them.
Yeah. He's explosive in that sense. And the Europa League finals are a great way to look at it. His 3 goals were brilliant, but all creating a little moment for himself, putting the ball in the back of the net. And just in terms of his numbers, 0.99 goal assists per 90 for Atalanta. He's basically directly involved in a goal every single game. That would be massive for Arsenal.
It feels like just all the talk around Arsenal, well, it's kind of around Arsenal at the moment, and their desperate need to sign a striker. You were saying this morning, Good Morning Transfers, maybe it's sort of not as bad as it seems. And I watched Arsenal last night, where a couple of their goal scorers, like Declan Rice, Martin Odegaard, if they can get goals from midfield as well, is it as bad as everybody thinks it is?
Yeah, that's the main thing. I think in January, like you said, it's going to be difficult to get the transfers that they really want to get. It's mainly looking like the summer, but I would be saying Arteta, he's wanting more from the squad. He's always praising them for the chances that they create. Havertz has got 14 goals this season. The same amount of goals that he had last year with 21 less appearances. Martinelli's got the same amount of goals that he had last year in the league as well. So if the other players are contributing, Declan Rice got some goals and assists, and I think they'll be fine. They're not in the worst position, but I can understand them wanting that striker that's got that killer instinct to, take more of the chances.
Yeah, and finally, Jonathan David. He's a player that's been around for quite a long time now. And when you look at him and how he's evolved recently in Liga, in the 5 seasons he's been in Liga, only Kylian Mbappe scored more goals than him. He's averaging a goal every other game. He can play everywhere as well. And that's kind of the profile of player. If Arsenal move in January, they need a forward that can play across the line, that's going to make things happen in the final third, that's going to provide real quality in those areas, which means they can go and buy a striker in the summer. More goals in the squad, a Leandro Trossard type impact is what Arsenal need to do.
I just think,
a message there for Josh Kroenke, by the way.
Are Arsenal fans going to be happy if they sign another player that can fill in a bit up front, play wide, but mostly a wide player or a 10? They need to go out and get the guy. They need to go out and get the number 9. And in January, if you spend money in January, that's taking budget from the summer. You're always considering the next move. And if you're spending on another forward player that can play across the front line but isn't going to be the guy, that's an issue.
It depends on how close they think they are to the title and the Champions League. You know, they're still in the Champions League, they're still in the title race. Will that player, you know, push them over the edge? We talk about Aubameyang when he came in 2018. He came in at 13 appearances, 10 goals. That's the type of impact that they want. But he was 56 million at that point. If they signed that type of striker now, it'd be double the amount. So it's going to be difficult. But like I said, I feel like they've got goals in their side. It's just more about getting them out of it.
Yeah, it's got to be the right signing. I think that's key, isn't it? Sticking with the theme of North London, though, after the break, could Tottenham really not sign another player in this window? And we'll discuss as well who needs what with 11 days until deadline day.
From Monday, the transfer show is going on the road. We'll be bringing you the latest transfer news live from the iconic Battersea Power Station on the south bank of the Thames. Join myself, Kaveh Solokol, Mike Wedderburn, a live studio audience and special guests every night as the countdown continues to deadline day.
We're enjoying that a bit too much.
Yeah, he's still walking.
He's still walking. We don't know where, just around South London, yeah. Right, Ange Postecoglou says there is a chance that Tottenham will not make any more signings in this transfer window. Spurs' priority is, of course, to sign a striker, like a lot of clubs, but Postecoglou says that nothing is imminent with regards to incomings.
You've talked about how difficult it is this window. Is there a possibility that no one else comes in at this stage?
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. As I said, clubs working hard to try and get some help for the players, but as far as I know at the moment, there's nothing imminent. So, but things happen quickly in sort of the last week of the window, so still hopeful.
Just very quickly, before we talk about what Ange said there and Tottenham in terms of transfers, just a small update to bring you. Kyle Walker has landed in Milan ahead, of course, of his medical at AC Milan. So we'll bring you plenty more updates on that move as and when we have them. There is an injury crisis going on at Spurs at the moment. What I actually found funny, because that wasn't in that clip, but the translator actually started coughing and said, like, even he's getting injured now. They do have a problem. There is a need for reinforcements, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. I mean, I've got a lot of sympathy for him because the injuries have been astonishing, the number and the scale of the injuries that he's had to deal with. And they had to bring in the goalkeeper because they were down to third or fourth choice, I think, eventually. I think a forward is what they really want. They really want someone that can play up front and maybe across those front three positions to fill in, should that be required. But I think also defensively, it's been really tough. They've lost Romero and Van der Ven for a long time, 2 different spells out for those players. So defensive cover is another issue that they've got.
Yeah, I think it was difficult for Ange because at the start of, let's say, the month, you could say, OK, some of the defenders, they're going to come back, but then more people started falling with injuries, and it's like, OK, cool, maybe we do need to recruit. And then at this point, it's like, how much work has gone into recruiting if they didn't think they were going to have to do that in the first place? And then you don't want to, rush into signings that won't, make the impact that you want or won't be ready to start. The keeper's coming and he's had a really good start, but sometimes you won't get that with players that, have to acclimatise to the league and to how Ange wants to play. So it's a difficult position for him to be in.
And we're talking about them sort of needing a striker. We were talking a minute ago about Arsenal needing a striker. Would you be looking at the same kind of names that you'd selected there?
I think with Spurs, it's interesting. Maybe you want someone that could also play central midfield, because we see players like Kulusevski, like, James Maddison at times, where they play attacking midfield, but also they can do a job in the wide areas. But I think for me, it's got to be defence. That's where Spurs really need to recruit for. A stat we dropped this morning in terms of when you're looking at both Romero and Van der Ven when they're fit, Spurs were about 8th in the Premier League. Without those two, they're 17th. That's in a relegation battle, and that's something that Spurs really need to address quickly. But also you look at Udogie and you look at Pedro Porro, those full-back positions are so intense, as well as the centre-back positions. They play man for man at the back. Without having backups to each of those positions that can equally play as well, Spurs are not going to climb up the league table as they should do with Ange's football. They've scored so many goals, but they can't keep a clean sheet.
No. We've covered a lot of clubs, to be fair, in Transfer Talk, but just before we go, you've each picked a team and what they need to do this transfer window. Talking of injury list, I mean, Bournemouth have got a big injury list, but they're flying despite that.
Yeah, exactly. They're doing so well, but I think as we get to the business end of the season, we mentioned, they play in such an expansive way and they press so well as a unit, but at the same time, I think them getting a striker will help out the other players that are overperforming in a sense. Kluivert's having his best goal-scoring season at Bournemouth. He's got 10 goals, Watara's got 5, Semenyo 7. But I think with the 2 main strikers out, I think it will be important for them to look at a striker.
You've got 10 seconds to tell us what Palace need.
Hugo Alvarez for Crystal Palace from Celta Vigo. Wing-back can play both sides.
Well, no, that was really quick.
That was really good, yeah. Fulham, looking for a right-back. Maybe Kyle Walker's moved to Milan means Emerson Royale comes to Fulham. We'll have to wait and see. But they need a right-back.
Brilliant timing, guys. Well done. Right, a reminder for you, if you need it, a Good Morning Transfers is back at the same time, as always, tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock for that. Make a note of that one. And then join us at midday for the very same show that we're on right now, Transfer Talk. We got Pep Guardiola live tomorrow lunchtime. Looking forward to that. And then for a full roundup of all the day's news, catch the Transfer Show at 5 o'clock and at 7 o'clock this evening as well. But coming up next here on Sky Sports News, it is a lunchtime live where we're going to hear from a whole host of Premier League managers.